30th day of the month of Tishrei, and it is therefore the first day of Rosh Chodesh Mar Cheshvan, and we are holding at the bottom, the very last line of Daf Mem Ches Amud Aleph, where the Gemara tells us as follows, talking about different kinds of grain and their chametz, how quickly they are machmetz. And then we're going to get into the definitions of how do you know something has become chametz, mishnayos that we have referred to earlier in the Maseches and in this parak. But the Gemara tells us at the bottom of Mem Ches Amud Aleph, Amar Rav. Rav says, Kava mi legna'a lepischa v'chein lechala. That a kava mi legna'a, a kav from Meloga. There's a place called Meloga. Rashi tells us that that's Shem Makam. Lepischa, that's how much you are allowed to need. How much dough you're allowed to make at one point in time on Pesach, because you're worried if you make more, it's going to become chametz. V'chein lechala, and that is also the minimum requirement for how much dough you need to make in order to be chayav in chala. So there is this measurement called a kav melegna. Now, says the Gemara, turning over onto Mem Ches Amud v'hatanya v'hatnan, chameshes revaim kemach v'oid chayav b'chala. How much dough do you need to make in order to be chayav in chala? And that is chameshes revaim, 5 revaim. 5 revaim is based on the Torah's measurement. Rashi tells us of arisa seichem, of your arisa. Rishis arisa seichem. That's what you need to give as chala, which is based on the Torah's measurement of the omer, which comes out to 5 revaim, 5 quarts, if you will. 5 revius halog in the Torah. V'oid, and a little bit more, meaning 5 and a little bit more. Tosfos here points out that Rashi has a different read. He doesn't have the word v'oid in this brisa because the question, Machlokes Rashi Tosfos, maybe the Machlokes Tanaim earlier, is whether or not you need to have enough challah to be able to take a little bit off and still be left with chameshes revaim, or once you have chameshes revaim, then you can take off a little bit of challah, even though you'll be left with less than chameshes revaim. So the way that Agmar has it is chameshes revaim kamach v'oid, 5 revaim plus a little bit more, so that when you take off a little bit, you'll still be left with chameshes revaim. So chayav and b'challah, that's what's chayav in challah. So we just said that it's a kav melegna. That's chayav in chala. So it says the Gemara, this is what he's saying, kava melagna, nami ahai shiurakai. That a kava melagna, this melagna in kav, that is 5 revaim. That's what it is. That's the measurement. It's called the kav melagna. Amar Rav Yosef, says Rav Yosef, hani nashi lidan, our women, noag lemefa kfitza lepischa. Our women usually make a kefitza. What's kefiza? Which is 3 quarts of a kav, meaning they don't make chameshes revaim, they do 3 at a time. They do 3. So Amal Abaya says to him, you think that you're being so machmer here? You think that you're being so frum, that on Pesach you're not going to make 5. You're not going to make 5 revaim. You're going to make 3. That's not such a chumrah. Chumrah da'asili de kulahu. This is a chumrah that ends up with a kula. It's a stringency that ends up with a leniency. De kamafka la mechala. Because if you make less than 5 revaim, then you are only then you're not going to be chayav in chala. So you are ending up for your chumrah and Pesach. You're losing out in the mitzvah of chala. So Amalei, so he says, no, the Avdan Rabbi Eliezer. No, they do it like Rabbi Eliezer. What did Rabbi Eliezer say? Tanya Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer says, that if you have a person that takes bread out of the oven, and puts it into a basket, hasal mitzarfan lechala, the sal, the basket, joins all of them together for chala, meaning they only need with a K, they only need 3 revaim kamach. They only need 3 out of 5. When they are making the dough, but they bake it and they pop it all into the same basket, and then they take challah from the finished product. Va'amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel says halacha. It says Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Shmuel halacha Rabbi Eliezer. We pass on like this opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Amar Leis, he says to him, Vaha itmar Allah, didn't we say about this? Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Leishana Ella Kikara Shel Bavel. That's only true about Babylonian loaves. Shenoishchos zu mizu. That one bites the other one. What does that mean? It means that when they are baked in the oven, they when they expand, they end up touching each other. They become what are they called? Pull-apart challahs, right? They become pull-apart, meaning that all the loaves kind of touch each other, so they all stick together. That's when you'd be able to count them all as one. Aval ka'achin lo, but with the skinny rolls that we have in Eretz Yisrael, that's not the case. So he says, "Hi, idmar Allah," and we said about this. Amar Rabbi Chanina, that Rabbi Chanina said, "I feel ka'achin." No, it's true. It's true even with the kachim, even with the skinny rolls that you have in Eretz Yisrael, that if you put them all in the same basket, you'd be chayiv and chala. So, Bar Rabbi Yirmiyah wants to know, Tavla she'ein la levizvin. A tavla, that means a table, but like a board that doesn't have a rim. Meaning you have a board that doesn't have like any, it's not a kli. It can't hold any liquid. Now, what's the din? What if you pile them all up onto this cutting board? So, toch kli ba'inan, do you need it to be inside of a kli, inside of a vessel, in order to be able to say that they have all joined together? V'haleka, because that you wouldn't have here. Or alternatively, every kli ba'inan, what you need is that they're in the same airspace, meaning that they're in the same area, and that you do have teku, and that is left as an unresolved question. Tanya Rabbi Eliezer says, Hasal Mitzarfan, that the basket is going to join them all together, that all be chayv and chala. Rabbi Yeshua says, Tanya Mitzarfan, the oven also combines them, meaning that if they're all baked in a very big oven together, so even if they're not going to be placed in the same basket, if they're baked in the same oven, it would also join them all together for the sake of challah. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, Kikar shel Bavel shenoishchos zu mizu mitzarfos, that if you have the Babylonian rolls, that Babylonian loaves that are all joined together, those ones are the kinds that are mitzaref, because they kind of stick together sometimes, but the other ones do not. Okay. On to our next Mishnah in the middle of Mem Chesam and Beis. Says the Mishnah as follows: Rabbi Gamliel teaches, Shalosh nashim lashers ka'achas. You can have 3 women kneading dough together on Pesach. Va'ofes b'taner echad, and they can all bake in the same oven, zu achar zu, one after the next. The Chachamim say, no, Shalosh nashim oskes be'batzik ke'achas, that you can have 3 women working on the same dough at the same time, meaning not that they are each working on their own separate doughs, but you can have 3 women working on the same dough. Achas lasha, one of them is kneading, achas erachas, one of them is shaping, achas ofa, and one of them is baking, meaning all on the same dough, but you cannot have them working on 3 separate doughs. Rabbi Akiva says, Lo kol hanashim v'lo kol ha'etzim v'lo kol ha'tanurim shavim. It says Rabbi Akiva, there's no standard measurement for what to do in order to prevent chametz occurring in the matzah baking process, because local anashim, that not all women and not all wood and not all stoves, not all ovens are the same. Zaklal, this is the rule. Tafach, if you see the dough is starting to fill up, starting to puff up, tiltash b'tzonin, you wet it with cold water, because that'll stop the fermentation. Meaning cold dough doesn't rise. So if you're worried at any point in time, so you don't say, no, it's okay. The Mishnah said that 3 women can work on the set. If it starts to rise, put it in cold water. That'll stop the fermentation process. Says the Mishnah, it says the Gemara as follows. Tan Rabban, the Brisa teaches as follows. And we're going to get our assembly line of making dough here. How does this work? Lasha, you have a woman that just kneaded the dough. He mikatefes, she is now going to form its shape. And her friend jumps in and continues kneading where the other one left off. Meaning, one woman is kneading, her friend jumps in, carries on kneading while she is forming it into whatever shape it's going to be. Mikatefes. Then she takes some dough, forms it. He oifa, and she bakes it. V'chavirasa, mekatefes tachta. So once she's shaping it, once she's finished shaping it, she puts it in the oven, and her friend now goes and shapes it. And the third woman jumps in and she continues the kneading process. Oifa, once the first woman has finished baking, she goes back to knead again. And her friend is then going to bake in her place. And the third woman is going to she's going to be shaping her dough. And the cycle continues. Kol's man, what's the rule here? Kol's man, for as long as somebody is handling the dough, it doesn't rise. Meaning, for as long as somebody is kneading the dough, there is no chimutz. Chimutz only begins once the dough is resting. Rabbi Akiva says, that not all women are the same, not all ovens are the same, not all wood is the same. Satanya, how does the story go down? Amar Rabbi Akiva, says Rabbi Akiva, Danti lifnei Rabbi Gamliel. I asked this question to Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel is the first Tana of our Mishnah. He's the one that says that three women can work on dough at the same time. So I asked Rabbi Akiva, it says Rabbi Akiva, I asked Rabbi Gamliel, Yelamdeinu Rabbeinu, teach us, Rabbi, Benashim Zrizah, Benashim Shein Zrizah. When you say your din about how to make dough, are we talking about women that are very quick, or Benashim Shein Zrizah, who are not so quick? Be'itzim lachem, we're talking about wet wood, or be'itzim yiveshim, or dry wood, because wet wood has a much lower temperature flame. And dry wood is a much hotter flame. We're talking about a hot oven or a cold oven. I mean, what are we talking about here? Amar said to me, Ein lecha elama sheshon chachamim. All that we have is that which the chachamim taught us. Meaning, what's the golden rule here? Zaklal. This is the rule. Tafach tiltish b'tzanin. If it starts to puff up, pop it in cold water. Meaning, all of these things are good practices. However, there's no standard measurement for how fast or how hot or what kind of oven you have. So take all your precautions, but no, if it starts to puff up, then you should make sure to dip it in cold water. And that is up to the next Mishnah. It says the Mishnah as follows. Masnisin, a Mishnah teaches us Ser Yisarf, and this is where we're going to get into our definitions of Ser and Chametz. The Torah talks about two things. There's Ser and Sa'ar, or Chametz. Mishnah has it as Se'ur Yisarif. Se'ur is some kind of yeast, meaning not fully Chametz yet, but it's on the way. And we'll see the definitions now. Se'ur Yisarif, that this Se'ur needs to be burnt. But if you ate it, you are potter. Why? Because it is not edible. The Torah tells you that you have to get rid of it, but if you eat it, you are potter. You are exempt. Siduk Yisarif va'ochel chayev kares. But once it has siduk, which means that the dough has started to crack on the face of it, Yisarif, that's when it needs to be burnt. Va'ochel chayev kares, and the person that eats it is chayev kares. Esasir, what is the definition of ser of the Torah? Says the Mishnah, at least the Tanakam, the Mishnah, ke karne chagavim. It is like the karne chagavim means that on the surface it looks like locust horns, meaning tiny little lines are appearing across this smooth dough. You have a smooth ball of dough, and all of a sudden you start to see, there's karne chagavim. There are small lines that are beginning to form. Siduk, what is siduk? Shinis arvu stakim zebazeh, when all of these cracks, all of these lines begin to interweave with each other. Those are the two stages. You have ser and you have siduk. Div Rabbi Yehuda, this is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Chachamim tell us no. That whether you are eating ser or you are eating siduk, you are chayav kares. Ve'ezo ser, what is the definition of ser? Called shichsifu panav. Ser is when the dough has whitened, meaning when it begins to look white, ka'adam sha'amdu sarisav, like a person whose hair is standing on end, meaning when a person loses blood in their face, goes, oh! So that look, is the whitening of the surface of the dough. Says the Gemara as follows. Tana Rabban, and the Brisa teaches us like this. What is the definition of ser? Kal shichsiv panav. That ser is the whitening of the dough, like a person whose hairs are standing on end. Siduk, what is siduk? Which is cracked, kekarne chagavim, like the horns of a locust. Divrei Rabbi Meir, this is the opinion of Rabbi Meir. The Chachamim teach us is a ser. What exactly is the definition of ser? Kekarne chagavim. They say that ser is that which Rabbi Meir had said is siduk. The Chachamim say no, that's already ser. Kekarne chagavim. Siduk, what is siduk? Shinis arba sadakim zeh, where the lines interweave with each other. V'zeh and whether you're eating at the siduk stage or at the ser stage, you be chayav kares. So there are three stages here. Stage number one is shichsifu panav. It becomes whitened. Stage number two is that there are karne chagavim, that there are little lines that begin to appear. And stage three is siduk, when these lines all start to cross over and intersect with each other. And the question is, which one of these is called ser and which one of these is called siduk? That's the machlekes here. Says the Gemara, didn't we say ser yisarif, that ser has to be burnt, pater, and one who eats it is pater? This is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. So ema l'Reb Meir, so we would say according to Rabbi Meir, according to Reb Meir, you have to say that both of them are chayav kares. Meaning, what we have here is Reb Meir had given us definitions that said that according to Reb Meir, that Sarah is referred to as the first stage, stage one, which is the whitening, and siduk is when you begin to see lines. That's the opinion of Reb Meir. So the end of this brisa tells us that at any stage you're going to eat any of these things, you'll be chayav kares. But didn't we say in the Mishnah pater? Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, the Rabbi Yehuda says that a person that eats it is pater, meaning at the earliest stage of ser, you're not going to be chayav yet. So you have to say L'Reb Meir, that according to Reb Meir, in both cases, both siduk and ser and siduk, that Rabbi Yehuda has defined ha'ochel chayav kares, that you'd be chayav kares. According to Reb Meir, Rabbi Yehuda's definition is you'd be chayav kares at both stages. Amar Rava says, "My time to remember. What's the reason for Reb Meir? Ein lecha kosedek v'sedek milamala she'ein lo yikamas sadakim milamata." Says Reb Meir, yeah, I'll tell you what the problem is that the moment that you start to see any cracks at the surface, it means that there are many, many, many cracks that are below the surface. Just because you saw it on the surface doesn't mean that that's the only place that it is. It means that chimetz is going all the way through. And I think that that's the same rule that they say about mold. That if you see a drop of mold in bread, so if it's at the surface, it means that it's gone all the way through. So if it's showing on the surface, that's the din of Reb Meir. And Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, we will continue with the next Mishnah on the top of Mem Tes Amud Aleph tomorrow morning. Chodesh Tov u'Mevarach, and everybody should have a beautiful day.